You know, there are a few times a year when I teach on something, and it can be a variety of topics, but there are these topics that the moment I teach on them, I see some of you roll your eyes and think to yourself, "Oh no, I'm going to have to just sit through this one, and maybe it'll be better next week," right? Because the topic isn't, always easy. Something that we always like talking about, and this week we're going to start this series where we're going to talk about a topic that a lot of you, that's your reaction to, because we're going to talk about giving. We're going to talk about money, and we're going to talk about it for the next 3 weeks. So I got a favor to ask of you before you roll your eyes and check out. Before you think you know what I'm going to tell you to do, before you think this is going to be some guilt-ridden 20, 30 minutes of your life, before you make plans to not be here next week so you don't have to listen to it again, I want to ask you to give me a chance. I want to ask you to give me a chance to talk about this topic, knowing that it's a little difficult, knowing all of the bad things that pastors and churches have done with money, understanding all of that. But I want you to give me a chance, because I want to make a commitment to you that my goal this week and for the next couple of weeks is not to try and convince you to give more money. My goal over this week and over the next few weeks is not to say, hey, if you don't give money, somehow you're a bad person. That is not the goal that we're trying to do. That's not the thing that I want to do today or even over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to tell you straight up what my goal, what my desire is, and it's simply this, that you will discover the joy of putting God first in your life. We talk about this often at Calvary. I talk about this often at Calvary, about putting God first in every area of your life, from your marriage, putting God first in your marriage, putting God first in your family, putting God first in your time, putting God first in your career, putting God first in every single area of our lives. And the reason we do that, the reason I believe it's so important, is that God promises that if we put Him first, and He asks us to do this not because He's a controlling, mean, manipulative God. He asks us to do this not because He's petty and he doesn't want you to enjoy your life. God asks us to put Him first because He's all-knowing and He knows what's best, and because He's all-loving and He loves you more than you realize, and He promises that He wants the best for us, and that if we will put Him first in every area of our life, He says that He will give us joy, and He will give us peace, and He will give us purpose, and He will give us strength if we will just trust Him. And so we talk about putting God first in our lives in a whole lot of different areas, but the truth is we can't talk about putting God first if we don't talk about putting God first with our money, with our resources, with the things that He's given us. In fact, I will go as far as saying that how we use our money reveals more about our heart and priorities than almost anything else. That we can say something's important to us, that we can say something's a priority in our life, but that's not really true unless we're willing to give the money and the resources that we have towards that thing. In fact, in our world, we live in this. Many people that I get the chance to sit down and talk with end up living in this cycle that I want to point out. I almost broke that right there. That I want to talk about here, because it's a cycle that's really common, where here's what ends up happening. We earn money, right? We make money. We get money somehow, some way. Maybe someone gives it to us. Maybe we go to our job and we get a paycheck. Maybe there's an inheritance. Maybe there's just investments. But we make money, and as we earn, we make money. We then consume. We buy stuff, and maybe it's important stuff like a house or a car or clothes or food or all of those kind of things, and we end up consuming. And then as we consume the money, the stuff that we've earned, we end up lacking, and so we have to earn more money, which is why you're going to go to work tomorrow, most of you, because you know that you don't have enough to make it through 2 weeks, right? You maybe have enough to make it through a week or through a couple of weeks, but you know that if you're going to keep consuming, you have to keep earning. And that's the cycle that many of us find ourselves in. Many of you find yourselves in. And this cycle is really challenging, because what ends up happening is it feels like we're always chasing more, doesn't it? I mean, do you ever feel like all you're doing in your life is just chasing a little bit more money? Have you ever thought, if I could just make a little bit more, everything would be better? And if you think that today, think back to 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago and thinking, if I just had a little bit more then, and imagine if you knew how much money you were making now compared to then, you would go, man, I'd be rich, but you don't have enough, because we're always earning and consuming and lacking, and earning and consuming and lacking. And then it's even worse if you sort of wrap this cycle around fear, where you put fear in the middle of it, that fear that I won't have enough, that fear that I'm going to run out, that fear that I'm going to lose what I have, that fear that the economy is going to crash, that fear that the coronavirus is going to shut down commerce and I'm not sure how I'm going to earn any money anymore, right? Those kinds of fears that we all have in our lives. And so we end up not just in this cycle of earning and consuming and lacking, it's all sort of held up by the fear that it's not going to have enough. And so we feel like we just got to keep needing, having more if we're ever going to find joy in this life. And then on top of that, we live in this crazy world that tells us that you deserve it. You can be the it, whatever you want it to be, right? You deserve it. You deserve the newest and nicest car. You deserve the bigger house. You deserve the newer clothes. You deserve the most recent electronic device. You deserve it. I mean, every single advertisement that you see is giving you the same message that you really deserve this. And in fact, you deserve it because you need it. And the reason you need it is you need it to be happy. And if you don't have this, if you don't have it, whatever it is, then somehow you're not going to be happy and find joy in this life. So, hey, even if you don't have the money to buy it, guess what? We'll give you a piece of plastic. I say that, my kids are like, what do you mean? We'll let you charge that. And you can pay it out over the next 35 years and pay 10 times what the original value is, because we'll just charge you a little bit of interest every month, because guess what? You deserve it now. And some of you are paying off stuff that you've already replaced, aren't you? All right, because you borrowed, you charged it, and you're still paying for it, and it already broke, and you already had to get another one and replace it. And so we end up in this cycle right here, don't we? We end up in this cycle where we earn, we consume, and we lack, and we're afraid we're not going to have enough, and where everybody's telling us you need more, and so we get caught feeling like there's never, ever enough. Now, I'm going to tell you that this is not a new phenomenon. It's not something that's unique to our culture or to our part of the world. In fact, this has been going on ever since the beginning of time. Ever since people realized that, hey, I would like a little bit more, may make me feel better for a little bit of time. And so God, though thankfully, offers us something better than feeling like we just got to keep having more to be happy. You see, God says, if you will put me first in your time and in your job and in your family and in your resources, if you will take the money, the stuff that God has given you, and if you will learn to be generous, God offers something better. I want us to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9. And I want to look at this couple of verses here. It says this. The point is this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. You know what Paul is saying here? He's saying that if you are giving with guilt, stop giving. Is that right? I mean, I love the way he says it here in verse 6. He says that each one must give as he has decided, and not reluctantly or under compulsion. Why? Because God loves a cheerful giver. He's saying that you get to decide. You don't have to give because you feel like if you don't give, God's going to somehow punish you. He's saying don't give because some pastor stands up and tells you if you don't give a certain amount, you're a bad person. Don't give because you think you can negotiate with God and get something back from Him. Don't give so that you can impress other people. He's saying that you get to decide in your heart what God is telling you to give, and you just need to do it, but do it not reluctantly or not under compulsion. Do it with joy, with cheerfulness. In fact, I think that if Paul were here today, he would say that it's better to give $1 cheerfully than give $10,000 complaining. Right? It's better to give $1 to because you know it's what God's calling you to do, because you know you're investing in something that matters, because you know it's the joy of being a part of what God's doing. It's better to give $1 with joy, with cheerfulness, with excitement, than it is to give $10,000 because I guess I better do it or God's going to punish me. I guess I better do it so I can impress other people. I guess I better do it so I can get some more from God because, I need a little bit more. No, he says that you get to seek him and you get to decide what to give. But he also reminds us, right, that what you sow determines what you harvest. That the point is, the big idea is that whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Now, I've never been a farmer, but I like to plant and I like to garden. And there's a principle that I've learned when I garden, right? If I plant one seed, I'm going to get one plant. And if I plant corn, you know what kind of plant's going to grow? Corn. It's not a trick question, right? This isn't difficult. It's pretty. Now, I'm sure, don't come up to me after service and say, well, there's this one seed. If you plant it, you grow like 45 plants. Okay, I get it. But normally, you know what ends up happening? Normally, if I plant one seed, I'm going to get one plant. And normally, whatever the seed that I plant is the type of seed that I plant is the type of harvest that I'm going to have as a result of that. Now, I may get a whole lot more corn out of one corn seed than just one piece of corn. It's going to be more, but he's saying that, listen, what you sow, what you plant, what you invest, what you give yourself to determines what you harvest. How much you sow, how much you give, how much you invest in determines how much you harvest. And so because of that, each of us needs to consider what we are giving. I want to give you a challenge this week. I want you to go online to your bank, and I want you to print out the last 30 days of spending. Just print out. You don't have to give it to me. Don't turn it in. Don't tell anyone else. And I want you to sit down with your spouse and maybe even sit down with your children. And I want you to put all the things that you spent money on over the last 30 days and put it in categories. You get to pick the categories however you want. Just look at it and you tell me what your spending says about your priorities. Look at each other and be honest. What does my spending say about what I value? What does my spending say about my priorities? Does it look like a picture of me just earning and so I can consume a bunch of stuff that's temporary and isn't going to last, and then I'm going to need more because I don't have enough, so I got to get some more, and just in this cycle of needing more and more and more and more? Is that what my spending looks like? Can we just admit that a lot of what we spend our stuff on is temporary? Doesn't last? Every one of you has bought something that you thought would be the end all and be all, and 3 months later you don't even know where it is any longer. And it doesn't satisfy, and it doesn't do what it promised or make you feel the way it promised, and so we just keep looking for the next thing. But what if we changed the way that we saw money? What if we changed the way that we saw it, and rather than this stuff that we have to get so that we can get a bunch of stuff that's not going to matter, and what if we said instead, everything that I have is an opportunity to invest in something eternal? What if I looked at my resources? I don't care if it's a lot or a little. And we just said, God, instead of it being just about me getting more and consuming more and having more and finding happiness and joy in life and stuff, what if we said, God, you know what, I got to pay my bills. Please pay your bills. That's important. Okay, and yes, God, I'm even going to enjoy this life some. Yes, that's important. He wants you to do that. But what if you also said, God, how can I use the things you've given me to invest in something that's eternal? rather than just wasting it on temporary stuff that's not going to satisfy. Because the second part that this verses tell us is we need to look at how we are giving. When money is viewed as a way to make me feel good, spending or giving to something that doesn't immediately make me feel good seems like a waste. It's why no one likes paying taxes. I've met a lot of people. I know a lot of people. You know who I've never met? Someone who said, oh, it's tax season. I can't wait to pay my taxes this year. Why? Because it's just like, it seems like a waste to us. Doesn't make me feel good. I don't even like the people who are spending that money. Why should I give it to them? And we look at anything that feels like an obligation, or like we have to, or like it doesn't immediately meet some need, like somehow it's a waste, or something I'll do only if I get something in return for it. Well, but when we begin to view money not just as something that makes me feel good, but a chance to invest in something eternal, then suddenly we realize that the stuff that God's given me is a chance to help someone else find life in Jesus. Is a chance to make a difference in the life of another person. Is a chance to do something that lasts for eternity. Every time you give to your church, every time you give to missions, every time you give to help another person, every time you do that, you're making a difference in the life of another person that will last forever, and you may not even know it until you step into eternity. What's going to happen when some of us step in to life with Jesus after this life comes to an end, and we look at Jesus in the eyes, and suddenly he says, you know, all that stuff that you gave, you know, those sacrifices that you made, look at the long line of people it made a difference in. And that sure is a lot better than, hey, look at all the stuff that's still down there that's broken now. It's not going to matter. It's not going to make a difference in someone else's life. You see, what brings us joy, why we can be cheerful givers, is because we know that the things that we are giving to are truly making a difference in the life of another. And so if you want to be, listen, if we want to be like Jesus, we need to give with a cheerful heart, because God is a cheerful giver. I want you to, for just a moment this morning, think about everything that God has given you. Think about all the gifts that He has given you. Think about the very breath that you take is a gift from God. The very life that you have is a gift from God. Think about the beauty of creation. Why is this world so beautiful? Listen, you see that sunset a few nights ago when it just looked like the sky was on fire, and everybody's posting all your pictures on Instagram and Facebook because it was so beautiful? You know why it was that beautiful? Because God made that for you, to just enjoy the beauty of His creation. I'm going to get to go to the beach in a few weeks. I'm going to stand at the edge of the ocean like I do every time I go there. And I'm going to look out on that vastness, and I'm going to see, just sort of be in awe of how amazing and beautiful and massive it is. You know why God did that? For us to enjoy the beauty of His creation. And He did all of that because He's a generous God. He didn't just make this world functional. He made it beautiful because He wanted to bless you. Think about the relationships that you had. I sat down just a few days ago and had dinner with some friends, and we just sat around a table until late, way too late in the night. I'm too old to stay up that late right now, right? And just late into the night, just sharing stories and laughing and joking around and just having this great, deep conversation about life and family and children, and then laughing at each other and all the dumb stuff we do. And it was just, I'm sitting there going, God, what a blessing this is. To get to just sit around with people you love and love you and enjoy life. I think about the resources, the stuff, my children, my family, all the things that God has given me. And on top of that, He died on a cross to pay for my sins. Our God is a generous God who has given us far more than you and I are ever going to understand. And that's why Paul tells us that God loves a cheerful giver, because God himself is a cheerful giver. He loves to give to you and gives you more than you realize. Take a moment right now and just think of one blessing in your life. One thing that you look at and go, man, that just makes life a joy. Think about it for just a second and say, you know what? That is a gift from God. But Paul takes it further than just being a cheerful giver, because down in verse 10, he says something that's just profound to me. He says, he being God, who supplies seeds to the sower and bread for food, will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way to be generous in every way, which through us will produce thanksgiving to God. You see what Paul is saying here is that this really does change the formula, that from just, earning and consuming and then needing more. It changes the formula, because he says that God supplies. God supplies. Everything that you have is a gift from God. He is a giving God, but he doesn't just give to you. It says that he supplies so that you can sow. So that you can take what God has given you and invest in people, invest in his kingdom, invest in all kinds of things that have eternal value, rather than just stuff that has temporary value. He says that he has given you so that you can invest, and when you give, he's going to multiply it. He's going to increase it. He's going to take the little gift that you give and do something better and bigger than you could ever do on your own. And at the end, what happens is that faith grows. What happens is that we see God working and we see God moving. Listen, I want to remind you today that God does not need your money. He created everything out of nothing. Do you think he's in heaven going, dude, if Stephen does not tithe this month, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be able to pay the bills. You think that's the way it works? No, God doesn't need my money. It's not like my little 10% makes all that much of a difference in the midst of everything that God's doing. It's not about God needing my money. It's about me believing and trusting that I can do what God has told me to do, and that he's going to take my gift and do something great with it. That he's going to change someone's life, that he's going to transform someone, that he's going to change a life. And this applies definitely to our like just pure money, to our finances, but it applies to sort of every area of our life. Listen, if you're a business owner, can you maybe change the way you see your business as more than just something to make money? There's nothing wrong with making money. Make money, be successful at your business. But what if you viewed it as more than just a chance to make money? What if you said, God, how can I use my business to bless people and point them to you? I mean, what if we stopped looking at our homes as just a place for me where I can go and watch TV or hang out or eat my dinner or do whatever it is I do at home? What if we started looking at our homes and say, you know what, God, use my home to be a place of peace and encouragement and a blessing to others. The kind of place that people want to go to because they can talk about God and find safety there. What if we stopped looking at our time as just this limited commodity that we have, that once it's gone, so I'm going to do whatever I want to do with my time? What if we said, God, how can I use my time to care for and invest in and give my best to other people so that they can find hope and life in Jesus? Simply put, everything that you have is from God. So live wisely. All right, live wisely. Pay your bills. Have fun. And be generous. Be generous because God is generous to you. And that is maybe the point that I hope we'll see over the next few weeks, is that giving ultimately builds faith. Look at this verse here. Go come back to that. It says, bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. You see what, and you may not know this, but there's one time in the Bible that God says test him. Right? There's like in the entire Bible, there's one time where God says you can test me. And you know what the one time is? Right here, when God says, if you will test me and not give more, not give less, not give out of obligation, not give out of fear, not give because someone twisted your arm, not give because you think you're going to get something in return. He says, if you will just give, God says, I will bless you in ways that you cannot imagine. Your faith will grow like you could never imagine because He is a giving God. Now, I want to be careful because over time, a lot of people have twisted this statement into saying that if you give God $100, He's going to give you 1,000. And if that's the way you're reading it, you're not reading it correctly, right? That's not what that's saying. He is saying that if you will give, you will see the blessing of God's provision, that God will take care of you if you will obey Him, if you will do what He says, nothing more and nothing less. Listen, a couple of days ago, I helped a friend of mine move, myself and a couple of others, and she's coming out of a very sort of not healthy relationship, one that's not honoring to God, and she made the really hard decision to honor God with her life and move out, and all that she had were a couple of boxes of clothes, a mattress, like not a bed, a mattress, 2 chairs, and maybe like 2 or 3 things in the kitchen, and it took 2 dressers, 1 cabinet, 1 dresser. That's all that she had when she moved out. And she had next to nothing, and we're moving her into this apartment. It took all of 15 minutes. It didn't take us. We could all just carry it right up the stairs, easy, quick. And we're sitting there. We're actually making a list of things that she needs because all of us that are there, like, how can we help this young lady who's in need and struggling and trying to do the right thing and trying to honor God? How can we help her? We made a list of stuff, and as we're making the list, we hear a knock. And her next door neighbor, who in the apartment, like right next to her, goes, hey, are you moving in today? And she goes, yes, I'm moving in. Well, he goes, I'm moving out, and I really can only take what's in my car. Do you want to come in my apartment and see if you need any of the stuff that's in here? And we're like, okay, what does that mean? That's a little creepy, but we're there's some guys, so we go in with her, right? We're smart about this whole thing, and we walk in and walk out with a little dining room table, bunch of stuff for the kitchen, a flat screen TV about that big, and a washer and dryer, and a bunch of other stuff. I don't even know. We just started taking it, right? Because he was going to just throw it away. And one of the guys who was there, who's not even a Christian, but is hearing us talk about God all the time, myself and some others talk about God, goes, so is this what God's like? I won't promise He's always going to provide that quick. I don't want to sit here and say that because some of you have had to wait till the last minute, haven't you? But I will promise, because God says put Him to the test, that if you'll trust Him, and if you'll follow Him, and if you'll be generous, and if you'll do the simple things that He's asking you to do, He will provide. Look, the washer and dryer she got, it wasn't the coolest, newest thing with like all the fancy little buttons and 750 different wash cycles where you can put the laundry soap in and it'll dispense it when it through. But you know what it does? It washes her clothes. And she was, trust me, she's like overjoyed. There's no complaining like, oh, I need a newer one. No, she just looked at it and goes, thank you, God, for the gift of provision. And He will provide. But He doesn't just provide, right? You get to see the blessing of God's work. You get to have people that don't even know Jesus go, is that what God's like? I can't tell you the number of times that I've that in this church, I can't tell you the stories of the marriages that have been healed through what God does at Calvary. I can't tell you the number of families that have been restored, the number of people who have found forgiveness and purpose. I can't tell you the number of people who have discovered new life in Christ because you are a giving and a generous people. Because you give of who you are and what you have to help invest in other people's lives. And every time we do a baptism, if you are giving, you're a part of that. Every time you see the children over there and them learning scriptures, listen, we don't do childcare. We teach children about Jesus. And every time that we get to do that, those of you who are so generous with what you have, you get to be part of that. When those teenagers go to youth camp this summer and they unplug from the craziness of this life and for 1 week just focus on Jesus and lives are changed, you get to be part of that. You get to see God change lives because you open up your hands and say, God, it's all yours anyway. And so I'm going to ask you, will you trust Him? I'm going to ask you, not to try to convince you to give more or do more. I'm going to ask you, will you just trust God and say, God, what do you want me to give? In your bulletin is a little piece of paper there. It says the joy of giving on one side of it, and the other side there's sort of three areas that I want you to pray. By the way, you're not turning these in. These are not for you to put up. We're not going to put them on the wall with your name, like, oh, look at what you're committing to. I don't want to see them. But I want to challenge you to go home and with your spouse and with your children. And by the way, you ought to do it with your children. Sit down and say, God, what do you want me to give to our church? God, what is it you're telling us to give? What is it you want us to do? If it's $1 and you do it with joyfulness and cheerfulness, do it. If it's more than that, do it. You don't get a plaque or an award for giving more. You don't get looked down on for giving less. I don't even know what you give. Never will, don't even want to know. But maybe just ask God, what do you want us to give to our church? Secondly, ask God, what do you want us to give to the Annie Armstrong offering so that other people can go and take the good news, take the truth of Jesus to communities across our country so that other people who maybe would never have the chance to be a part of a church like our church that we love so much. God, what is it that you want me to give to that? And just do it. And thirdly, look, one of my prayers is God lets us pay this building off soon. It was a $750,000 project. We owe $317 on it. It's really pretty impressive. It's only been in a couple of years, 2.5 years. We have a payment every month of $3,600. We make it easy. There's no problem. We give extra most of the time, right? It's all good. Everything's good. But wouldn't it be nice if we could just pay this thing off and use that money to tell people about Jesus? And so maybe God's leading some of you to give to just help pay this building off and be done with it. If He's not, it's okay. I'm not asking you to turn it in. I'm asking you to pray and say, God, what do you want me to give? Listen, one of the things I love about our church family is you are generous. I'm amazed every time we increase our budget, and we have to do it about every 6 months because some new opportunity, some new need, something comes up, we keep growing. And you know what? Every time we increase it, I'm like, God, I don't know how we're going to make that. And every time I pray that, God goes, here you go, and we exceed it within weeks because you're generous. I watch as you give to the different missions offerings that we give, and we actually get recognition for your generosity because you're so generous, right? Because our giving as a church, for a church our size, is higher than most other churches that are our size. And so people just go, hey, good job, Calvary. Look at how much you give. And we don't make a big deal out of it because it's not a big deal because we're just giving to Jesus. And I know that if I stood up here today and if I said, hey, there's a need, someone needs X number of dollars to meet a real need in their life, that I have no doubt in my mind that before the day's over, that need would be met because I've had to do it before and I've seen it happen before because you were generous. And so please don't walk away from here thinking you're not generous or I'm mad at you or you need to give more. Please walk away from here realizing that I want you to experience the joy of using the resources that God's given you for His kingdom and His work.